Have you ever wondered why the most powerful institutions in the world tend to make their most significant moves in the dead of night while the rest of the world is sleeping? There is a specific type of psychological tension that arises when we realize that the information we see on our screens might just be a carefully curated shadow of a much larger, more physical reality. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the paper economy. When the digital numbers on a screen stop matching the physical movement of assets in the real world, which one do you trust? This past weekend, a ripple of collective anxiety, or perhaps it was a surge of adrenaline, hit the precious metals community. It all started with a single post on the image board Bees, which was quickly screenshotted and amplified by the account Wall Street Jesus. Within hours, the post had racked up over 2.8 million views. The claim was simple but explosive. JPMorgan chartered 12 empty Gulfstream G650s to Zurich Friday night. They came back full. Source: "My cousin is a loader at the private terminal." The caption added a layer of urgency that sent the silver forums into a total frenzy. They are airlifting silver before COMEX even notices. Now, before we dive into the logistics of this, we have to look at the environment we are living in right now. It is December 18th, 2025, and the silver market isn't just hot. It is arguably in a state of total systemic transformation. We have watched silver climb from the high 20s at the start of the year to a staggering record high of over $66 an ounce just this week. When you see a move like that, every rumor feels like it could be the smoking gun. But let's take a step back and look at the Harry's coin shop perspective. If you walked into a shop today and told Harry that 12 private jets were hauling silver across the Atlantic, he'd probably lean over the counter, adjust his glasses, and ask you to do the math. The internet thread claimed that each of these Gulfstream G650s was carrying approximately 100 tons of bullion. This is where we have to separate the internet hype from the cold, hard reality of aviation. A Gulfstream G650 is a masterpiece of engineering. It's the gold standard of business jets. But it is not a C-5 Galaxy. The maximum payload for a G650 is actually only about 6,500 pounds, which is roughly 3 tons. If you tried to put 100 tons of silver on a private jet, the tires would pop before you even finished loading the first tenth of the cargo. To move 100 tons, you would need a fleet of heavy-lift cargo planes, not sleek executive jets meant for CEOs. However, the fact that the 100-ton figure is a physical impossibility doesn't mean the rumor itself is devoid of truth. In the world of high finance intelligence, people often get the details wrong, but the vibe exactly right. Why would an institution like JPMorgan charter 12 private jets to Zurich? If they were moving something, it wasn't a mass market delivery. It was a surgical strike. Even if each plane was only carrying its maximum payload of 3 tons, 12 planes would equal 36 tons of silver. In a market where the COMEX registered inventories have been drained by over 70% this year alone, 36 tons of physical metal is not a small amount. That is over 1 million ounces of silver. At $66 an ounce, we are talking about nearly $70 million worth of metal moving in a single night, under the radar, via private terminals. To understand why people are so quick to believe in secret silver airlifts, you have to look at what has actually happened in 2025. This has been a year of unusual facts that sound like fiction. For instance, did you know that in October of this year, a single order for 1,000 tons of silver placed by a consortium in India triggered a temporary freeze in the London silver market? That wasn't a rumor. It was a documented market disruption. We are living through a period where the industrial demand for silver, driven by the massive expansion of AI data centers and the global solar panel boom, has finally collided with a stagnant mining supply. The AI boom of 2025 has been a primary driver that many people overlooked. We talk about chips and electricity, but we rarely talk about the silver paste required for the high-end circuit boards that power the latest generative models. As the demand for processing power skyrocketed this year, so did the industrial theft of silver from the investment markets. Silver is being consumed, not just stored. When a silver bar goes into a solar panel or a motherboard, it is effectively gone from the investment market forever. It is not like a gold bar that sits in a vault for 100 years. Silver is a restless metal. It wants to be used. One of the most startling facts from this month, specifically between December 1st and December 9th, was the reported drainage of the COMEX vaults. In just 4 trading days, nearly 60% of the eligible silver was claimed for delivery. This is the kind of data that keeps traders awake at night. When you see that level of physical demand, you start to realize that the paper-to-physical ratio is breaking. For years, the silver market has been traded at a ratio where there were hundreds of paper ounces for every 1 physical ounce in a vault. In 2025, the owners of that paper finally started showing up at the door and asking for their metal. This brings us back to JPMorgan. Rumors have been circulating all month that JPMorgan has been hoarding silver while simultaneously positioning themselves for a massive move into the Singapore market. In late November, news leaked that JPM was relocating its core precious metals trading team to Singapore. Why? Because the center of gravity for physical metal is shifting east. The Shanghai Gold Exchange has been trading silver at a premium of 6 to 10% over the New York price for most of the year. If you are a big bank, you don't want your silver in a vault in New York where it can be claimed by a COMEX contract at a lower price. You want it in Zurich or Singapore, where the real physical market is thriving. Another little-known fact that has defined 2025 is the entry of the Russian central bank into the silver market. For decades, central banks only cared about gold. But in late 2024 and throughout 2025, the Russian State Reserve Fund began officially diversifying into silver. They aren't the only ones. We have seen similar, quiet accumulation from other BRICS nations as they prepare for a new trade currency framework. The psychological shift here is massive. If silver is no longer just an industrial commodity or a poor man's gold, but is instead becoming a reserve asset for sovereign nations, then a price of $66 is actually incredibly cheap. If we look at the historical inflation-adjusted high, silver would need to cross $145 to match its 1980 peak in today's purchasing power. This is the secret math that the big banks know. When the @Wall Street Jesus post went viral, it tapped into the fear that the big boys are front-running the public. They aren't waiting for the price to hit $100 to move their metal. They are moving it now, while they still have the logistical cover to do so. In the shop lately, we have seen something Harry hasn't seen since the late 70s. The numismatic premium on coins has essentially vanished because the melt value has risen so fast. People are bringing in beautiful, rare America the Beautiful 5-ounce coins and selling them as generic bullion because they need the cash, or because the shop simply can't justify paying a premium when the spot price is moving $2 a day. It's a fever dream market. We've seen 90% constitutional silver, the old Mercury dimes and Roosevelt dimes, selling for 45 times their face value. Think about that. A dime, a 10-cent piece, is now worth $4.50 in silver content alone. The clandestine nature of the JPMorgan rumors fits perfectly into this atmosphere of scarcity. When things get scarce, they go underground. You don't transport millions of ounces of silver on a public freighter if you are worried about force majeure events or government seizures. You use private jets. You use Zurich. Zurich has always been the black box of the world's wealth. What happens in the Zurich vaults stays in the Zurich vaults. If JPM did indeed fly 12 jets into Zurich, they were likely moving metal out of the reach of the New York clearinghouses and into a private status where it can be sold to the highest bidder, likely a sovereign entity or a massive tech conglomerate, without ever appearing on a public exchange. Let's talk about a few things that didn't make the mainstream headlines this year, but changed the silver market forever. The silver to copper ratio. For the first time in history, several major electronics manufacturers in Japan announced they were looking for silver-free alternatives for high-end semiconductors because the price of silver was becoming a primary cost inhibitor. They haven't found a replacement yet, which only proves how indispensable silver is to the modern world. The mining deficit. In 2025, the global silver mining deficit reached its fifth consecutive year. But for the first time, the above-ground stockpiles were estimated to be at their lowest levels since the 1950s. We are literally running out of the buffer that has kept silver prices suppressed for 40 years. The paper freeze. On December 12th, just a few days ago, a major brokerage firm had to settle in cash on several silver futures contracts because they simply could not find the physical bars to satisfy the delivery request. This is the nightmare scenario for paper traders, and it's actually happening. Why do we love the source, my cousin type of storytelling? Because in a world of official reports and audited statements, we have learned that the truth often leaks from the bottom up. The loaders, the pilots, the vault guards, they see the physical weight of the world moving. If 12 G650s landed in Zurich, people noticed. The G650 has a very distinct profile. It's the Ferrari of the skies. Seeing 12 of them lined up at a private terminal is like seeing 12 red Ferraris parked at a local grocery store. It's conspicuous, even if it's supposed to be private. The storytelling in the @Wall Street Jesus post is a classic hook. It gives you a specific location, Zurich, a specific time, Friday night, and a specific actor, JPMorgan. Whether it was silver or some other high-value asset, the vibe is that the exit doors are being used by the people who own the building. In the precious metals world, we call this getting your physical in hand. If the world's largest bullion bank is moving its own physical supply to a more secure, private jurisdiction, what should that tell the average person who is holding a paper silver ETF or a digital account? Harry often talks about the 1979-1980 run-up. Back then, it wasn't private jets, it was armored trucks and people lining up around the block with tea sets. But the psychology was the same. It was a dash for trash that turned into a dash for real. In 2025, we are seeing the digital version of that. Instead of tea sets, we have people buying up every single 1-ounce round they can find. The fact that America the Beautiful coins are being sold at spot price is a sign of a liquidation phase among some, but a consolidation phase for the big players. The JPMorgan airlift rumor is the 2025 version of the Hunt brothers. But instead of two brothers trying to corner the market, we have a global systemic cornering happening due to industrial necessity and geopolitical tension. The private jets are just the symptoms of a fever that has been building for decades. There is one more detail in that viral post that is worth analyzing: the claim that the jets went empty and came back full. In logistics, deadheading, flying empty, is incredibly expensive. You only do it if the payload you are picking up is so valuable and so urgent that the cost of the fuel and the charter is irrelevant. If silver is at $66 and headed for $100, then the cost of a private jet charter, roughly $10,000 an hour, is just a rounding error for a bank like JPMorgan. They aren't trying to save money on shipping, they are trying to save time on possession. Possessing the metal is now more important than the price of the metal. If we look at the dates, Friday night would have been December 12th. That was the same day the COMEX saw one of its largest deliverable spikes of the year. The timing is almost too perfect. If you were a bank and you knew that on Monday morning a flood of delivery notices was going to hit your desk, what would you do over the weekend? You would move your private stock as far away from the public exchange as possible. We are approaching a red line in the silver market. This year has been full of surprises, from the BRICS currency announcements to the AI-driven silver shortage. But the biggest surprise of all is the resilience of the physical buyer. Despite the price doubling in a year, the lines at the door that Adrian and Harry talk about haven't disappeared. In fact, they've changed. People aren't just buying shiny coins anymore. They are buying industrial insurance. As we move toward the final weeks of 2025, the JPMorgan rumor will either be debunked by the lack of physical movement or confirmed by a sudden, massive adjustment in the reported silver holdings of the big banks. But regardless of the truth of those 12 jets, the unusual facts of this year remain. Silver is in a structural deficit. Central banks are buying, and the paper market is thinning out. When you look at the screen today and see silver at $66, don't just look at the number. Think about the physical reality. Think about the loaders at the private terminals in Zurich. Think about the melt value of the coins in your pocket. The story of silver in 2025 isn't just a financial story. It's a story of a world rediscovering the value of things you can actually hold. The 100 tons per plane might have been a hallucination, but the 12 jets to Zurich might just be the most important flight of the decade. In a world of fever dreams and market mania, the only thing that is real is the weight of the metal in your hand. As Harry says, God willing, the shops will keep buying and selling, but the days of cheap silver and public silver might be coming to a very rapid, very private end. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the shadows of the 2025 silver market. If you found this analysis of the JPMorgan rumors and the unusual facts of this year's silver squeeze helpful, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. What do you think about the Zurich airlift rumor? Is it just internet hype, or is the physical market finally breaking away from the paper exchanges? We want to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep stacking, stay informed, and keep a close watch on those private terminals.